What's up, guys? How you all doing? Welcome to another video. Hey, today we're going to be checking out some more information with the good old Tevo Little Monster. We're going to be checking out some issues I've had with it now that I've been printing with it for quite a while, and some different remedies that I had to go through. Buckle up, because it's going to be a little bit of a ride, because there's quite a few different things, but I think it will help a lot of you, because I've seen a lot of stuff in the forums about problems with it. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please stay tuned, because it's coming up right here, right now on misperry. Okay, so now to talk about the different issues I've been having with the Little Monster. Now, this thing has been one of the greatest printers I think I've had. I want to say that this printer prints magnificently, prints all different kinds of materials. I've not yet tried nylon yet, but I've tried pretty much everything else, and it just prints like a dream. It's fantastic. Now, problems that I've had with it. I will say it is worth it, but I have had some problems, so I'm hoping that this video will kind of encompass a lot of it. The problem that when I first started having major problems with it was when I transported it. I tried to move it to Maker Faire, and it was an epic fail. Part of that was my fault. I don't think it was really the printer. I think it was my fault. I should have done just a full recalibration of it. I should have put it through the calibration mode. I also should have taken and zeroed out the Z-axis offset. For those of you that own these, you'll know what I'm talking about. Basically, you know, you've got the BLTouch sensor that finds where the bed is, but then you can also adjust the height of the Z probe in the G code, in the start G code. So that way, you know, you can get it exactly however thick you need it to be. You know, all printers have that. So, you know, you all have to mess with that, whether you're using manual leveling or whatnot. You may have to finagle around with the Z axis, you know, in the G code for where it's going to start at. You know, everybody should be used to that if you own one. I should have done all that, because what happened was I set it up, and it started printing way too close to the bed. It ended up plugging up the nozzle. I tried desperately to unclog the nozzle, which I think I just made it worse. I think I even scraped off some of the metal in there and got some metal shavings down in the print nozzle, and it stuck, and it was just an absolute mess. Epic fail. So since then, I had tried to repair it, and I just went through all kinds of mess trying to repair this thing. It just seemed like one thing right after the other happened. So I'm going to pull up my bench over here, see if I can get that pulled up in the video screen here. There we go. And I'm going to show you some of the things that I had trouble with. One of the main things I had a problem with was the good old Hotend. Like I said, that was the main thing that got a problem. Is it got a clog in it, and I tried everything to clear it. I unscrewed the hot end. I unscrewed this whole mechanism right here. I unscrewed everything trying to clear that clog. And I even took one thing that I've noticed that works actually pretty well is you take a propane torch and unscrew the head, the 0.4 millimeter head or whatever, and just heat that up super hot with it, and that'll melt all the plastic out of it. And then take a air compressor, and then backwards, you know, put it on the tip of it, and, you know, basically going down here in the video here, go blowing air this way. Of course, you unscrew this tip and blast all the plastic out of it, is what I basically ended up doing. And so I knew that it was clear. I could hold it up to the light and look through it and see a perfect channel through it. So it looked okay, but still had problems. I ended up having problems with it gooing out around. So it was coming out around the edge here. It wasn't just squirting out the top. It was squirting out the edge. It squirted out the top. Like, this unscrews. I take this off. And right where this screwed into this metal piece right here, this aluminum piece right here, it would squirt out all around that. So that basically there's a white sealant that they put on the threads that keeps that from happening. That was what was happening. It was just an absolute mess. So what I ended up doing is I ended up saying, all right, you know what? I'm done with that. I'll just order a new head, or a new, you know, print head. You know, screw it. Let's just go back to the beginning. They can't be that expensive. I've ordered them in the past. So what I did was I looked at their website. They have no parts for the Little Monster, at least that I can see. And that's another thing in this video. If you know where to find parts to this thing from Tevo, let me know down in the comments, because I basically just sourced it from all over the place, you know, to find pieces and parts. But basically, the closest I could find was the Volcano Hotend that is for that's for the Tevo whatever it is, the tarantula. Sorry about that. I'm trying to silence this phone that's screaming. It never fails. Every time you make a video, someone calls you on the phone. Anyway, so I saw this and I was like, well, heck, that's the exact same print head, you know, basically. That's the exact same one that's in the Little Monster. So we'll buy that. Okay, that's what this is over here. So let me zoom in and let me show you something that is completely bad. If you notice this, now the Tevo Little Monster, those of you that don't know, or whatever, I'll see if I can zoom in on this. Do you see this plastic tube here? Let's see if I can, let me see if I can make this like humongous so we can look at it. See the plastic tube that's right here, and see how it's got one of those like hydraulic fittings where you push the plastic in and then it won't let the plastic back out. Okay, that's a screw-in fitting. Okay, now look over here. Look over here now at my bench. Do you see any threads on that? You see any threads on that? See what I'm saying? See here, watch. I'll pull it up here. See, no threads on the one that's for the tarantula or whatever. So there's no threads. So you can't hook this back up with the Tevo Little Monster. So I was like, oh, what the heck? And I'm telling you, I looked everywhere. That's why I'm saying, guys, if you guys use the Tevo Little Monster and you know where to source the actual part from, let me know down in the comments, because I fixed it myself. But for those of you out there, you may not have the tools and stuff that I have to be able to fix it yourself. So that's why I'm saying, if you know where to source the actual part for the Little Monster, definitely let me know down in the comments. But basically, what I ended up having to do is drill this out. So just for a second, I'm going to show you what I did. And let me unscrew this. This unscrews, okay? Because I highly recommend unscrewing it, because I actually had to order 2 of these. So this unscrews because I drilled this out like a dingleberry, like a cotton-headed ninny muggins. And basically the shavings went down and plugged the head again.
Son of a nutcracker.
So yeah, so I plugged the head basically twice. So in any case, now we have the basically the little heat sink here that comes with it, and we have to drill this out. What I used, so I first used a just normal twist drill. Let's see, this is let me make sure I get this right for you. A 26 60-seconds or 64ths. Yeah, 26 64ths is the twist drill that I used. But what the problem is, and I've already got a hole here that I can, it'll line up and drill straight. So I just put it in a drill press, was all I did. I'm sure you could probably do this with a hand drill, except I wouldn't recommend it, because you could get it, sideways, get it off. And so it'd be a problem. Whereas just a regular old drill press would be just great. So that drilled the hole, and that was fine. And I didn't go all the way through the material, obviously, because if you look at the original one, it doesn't. So I drilled it down to about there or so. And the only problem is it's flat. So when you try to put filament down through it, since it's flat, the filament hits on the flat part, and it takes you forever to get it to go through the hole in the middle, through the little 175, hole that's in the middle. So what I did for that is I used a number 4 drill starter. That's what these are. I don't know if you've ever seen these. You can get them from Amazon. I got them from that Anytime Tools or whatever that's called, but it's a number 4 drill starter. And if you look at it, see if I can get it close enough, you see that it's basically got a chamfer already on it. It's like a countersink. So what I did was I drilled the hole with the 26 64ths twist drill, but then I came back with the drill starter and I ran that in there a little bit to give it that chamfer, to give it that little deal. And then that way, as the wire's coming in, it hits that kind of cone shape it makes, because it does this. And if it hits the side of it, it slides right down the side and right down into the hole. Okay, so that's how I basically created the internal bevel inside this. Then yes, we have to thread it. And of course, just like everything, it is a metric thread. So I got a metric tap. I'll show this to you up close. So there's the metric tap that I got. Now you got to make sure it's got kind of like the fine thread. Now I had a whole metric set of taps because I had to work on some stuff, work on a car actually that had a whole bunch of metric things and had some broken off bolts in it. So I had to straighten threads out and whatnot. And some of them I had to cut new threads. So I bought an entire set of these. But the one that you'll need for this one is let's see if I can, look at it correctly, It is a 10 millimeter by 1. Okay, so 10 millimeter by 1, and the by 1 is the pitch. 10 millimeter is how big around it is. So you'll need a 10 millimeter by 1 tap here. Okay, and what you'll end up with, this is the old one that still has plastic stuck in it, is you'll end up with something that looks like that. I don't know if you can see that real well, but you'll look at that. See how, I don't know if you can tell if that's kind of beveled in there, but then it'll be threaded. And then that way you can screw that little connector, you know, that here, looking at the big screen here, you know, this connector that's right here. I don't know if you can see this right here, but that connector will screw back in to the top of this, into the top of this thing. And then you can then put it all back together. I don't know, I threw the other thing because I was mad at it. Anyway, but then you can put it all back together. You can screw it back together, okay? So after all of that fiasco, and I got that all put back together, and it was working great. I could push the filament through it. It heated up fine. The thermistor worked fine. So that was all of that I did, okay? Then as I was going, I noticed that this fun little gadget right here, the BLTouch, stopped working. It just stopped working. It wouldn't light up. It wouldn't work anymore. It was just like dead in the water. So what did I do? The first thing I thought, well, maybe the BLTouch is screwed up. So I bought a brand new BLTouch, which by the way, these are not cheap. But anyway, I bought a brand new one, did the same thing. So I'm like, all right, well, then probably not the BLTouch. I did everything. I took the little wires here. I took a continuity meter and I measured it from the plug here. I actually unplugged it because it just pops out. Do that. Okay. It just pops out. I measured it from this connector all the way up to the actual board where it plugged into the board. Continuity was great. So it had connection. There wasn't a broken wire or anything like that. So there was no broken wires. Then I took and plugged this in just to make sure. I took the plugs here and just plugged them straight into the board, you know, and just let this guy just kind of hang out off to the side of the board. Still didn't work. So I'm starting to think, all right, well, maybe it's firmware issues. So I went to Tevo's website, and you can get on their forum that's right here, and you can get their firmware. You click this GitHub link, and it basically takes you to the SmoothieWare website, and it tells you that you make sure you download the bin of your file and whatnot. So you want to get the firmware CNC latest bin if you want the latest, or you can go, you know, a step back and get this one. So you download that, and how you update the firmware on this, it's actually extremely simple. Up here on the main controller board, over here on the side, should be an SD card. And you push it in for it to eject it. Now you do this with it powered off, but you push it in and then it spring ejects back out. You pull out the SD card. You get yourself one of these like SD card readers, you know, micro SD card readers. And I should have said that. It's a micro SD card. My bad. Pull that out and read it. And basically it's just drag and drop. The firmware is just sitting on that card. And so you can basically download this if you want the latest, and you literally just, you delete the old one that's named firmware, and you just drag and drop this bin file onto there, and that's all you have to do to upgrade the firmware. Now, I started to do that, and well, no, I take it back. I did that. I went ahead and threw the new firmware on there. Now, I saved the old firmware just in case, you know, just in case. And there's other stuff on there too. I think there's like a test print on there and things like that. So I just went ahead and dumped this guy onto the chip. Okay. And it seemed to work. It seemed like it took off and calibrated and whatnot. So it seemed to work. Now, one thing you have to also do is in here on this, let's see, where are we at? MKS TFT2 control board, Little Monster. When you click on this, you also have to if you look at this, you also have to get the config file. Now, if the config file you're just upgrading the firmware, your config file should still be there on the chip, and you probably don't have to mess with it. But if for some reason the chip died or something like that, you know, the micro SD card died or something like that, and that's the reason you're redoing all this, you can download the config from here. Now, disclaimer, you do have to be a member of this, but registration's free. You just go up here and register, give them your email and all that jazz, or give them a fake email, whatever. And then you can download that config file, and then you're good to go. So now, once I did that, put that all in, nothing. Absolute nothing. Still BLTouch, no worky. game over. So then I got to thinking, well, maybe it's the actual board itself. So I took a scope, because the BLTouch, and that's what I have here, the BLTouch works off of PWM. Okay, so here's the actual manual for the BLTouch sensor. Okay, and it shows that you give different pulses. There's different pulses and different pulse widths, and it tells you this, available PWM range. And it tells you based on if you're wanting to push it up, push it down, what you're wanting to do with the command structure. This is what the wave pattern is going to look like coming out to issue the commands. Okay. So I'm like, all right, great. I should be able to scope probe the signal pin, which I believe is the orange pin, or no, the yellow pin, and see those PWM waves. All right, so now I've got a brand new board for this thing. Change out the board and everything. Put the firmware in it or whatever. Now, when I scope probe the signal line, I get some little blips and stuff, and I'm starting to get little waves and stuff. So I do believe my board had something wrong with it as far as BLTouch. I have no idea why. I may swap it out again just to test and make sure, because I'm not really 100% sure. I'm still wondering if it was firmware, and I'll get to that. But it still wasn't working properly. Like, things just weren't registering correctly. So what I ended up doing is I took the old chip, because I used a brand new SD card because I had one laying around. I thought, let's rule out that the SD card might be bad. So that's what I flashed the new firmware to. So I took the old SD card, and after looking at it, you have a package on there that's just called mainboard.zip. If you extract that, it's the firmware that came stock with your system. It's basically a fresh extraction of it. It's just zipped up. So I went ahead and did that. So I deleted the old firmware off of the old chip. I extracted the mainboard.zip that's on the old SD card and redid all that. It gives you a new config file, basically just kind of refreshed all the software. Plug that back in to the board over here, and I started getting some signals and whatnot, and started getting life out of this thing. Now, the BLTouch sensor still wasn't working right. So I probed, when I was probing it, or I take it back, when I was probing it, I looked, it was only 3 volts that was coming out of it. Only 3 volts. So I started looking at, let's pull this up. Okay. So I started looking at the board. I noticed a couple of things right here. Okay. So to get yourself oriented. So the front of the board is over here on this side. Okay. So that's the front of the board. Basically we're looking at the butt end of it here. So up at the top, these blue ones, that's where all your stepper motors go in. That's where your extruders go and all that stuff. So in this lower corner of the board, I don't know if you can see where my cursor is, but in the lower right-hand corner of the board, I'm going to start zooming in on it. You see this. There is a pin jumper here. One side, the jumper, if you move it to one side, it is 3 volt. The other side is 5 volt logic. Now, the way that our system is designed and the way that the BLTouch sensor is, BLTouch sensors come stock with 5 volts. Now, there's a trace that you can cut that'll turn it to 3 volt logic, but it's 5 volt logic. Now, I noticed that my old board had this jumper on 5 volts, but the new board did not. So I was like, aha. So I moved the jumper over. Okay. And voila, things started working. The BLTouch sensor was working. I could send it commands. It would go up, it would go down. It would test itself. It would do everything. So we made progress. Awesome. So it was working. Now, something that I know all of you have dealt with. How many of you have dealt with your Tevo Little Monster sending the hot end all the way down only to crash into the middle of your bed? Sound familiar? Right? That was the next step. That was the next thing that was happening. Now, a few things can cause this. Let me bring up my bench view here. Okay. A few things can cause this. A big one is how you hook up these wires. You got to watch this wire right here. This little black and white wire. This wire is basically the feedback of the sensor. This wire over here is the power and the signaling for me to say, for us to tell it, to whether to go up, down, or to test itself or whatever. This one is the one that's giving you the feedback of when it touches the bed. This is a polarized, is the polarity matters on this. White needs to go to white and black needs to go to black. Okay. Now the problem is this connector is not polarized. It's just a regular connector. So you can get this backwards. If you get it backwards, it's not going to burn up anything. It's just not going to work. It'll just crash, boom, right into the bed. Okay. So that's the first thing that you need to check. You need to make sure that that is okay and that you have good continuity from the board to that. The next thing that we want to check now is on the board. Okay. Since I replaced the board, I was like, well, there might be something. So maybe I saw this jumper setting. Maybe there's another one. There is. If you go on just straight up from that connector, you go straight up, you'll see there's another one. There's another one right here. Do you see that? This one tells how many steps per minute, I believe, that you want this thing to basically count in. And there is 32 and there is 16. In the documentation for Tevo Little Monster, it says this jumper must be set to 32. Not 16. So 32 is what you want to set it to. And the minute I jumpered that, it stopped crashing into the bed. It went down, it leveled. Everything was perfect. Everything was working magnificently. All right. So basically that was the end of my problems. I printed some gears, very tiny gears for a friend of mine on it using ABS and using 0.1 millimeter thickness. It printed beautifully. It did not have a single flaw. They came out perfect. I mean, just absolutely great. So this thing is back working again. It's still a magnificent printer. I would still recommend it. Highly recommend it. But I just want to let you know of different little quirks, you know, just like anything, all of these different machines will have their own personality, right? And this one is no different. It has its own personality, has its own little quirks and weirdnesses. But that was some of the stuff because I've seen so many comments, so many posts on their forum, which, by the way, they have a Facebook forum. Let me pull that up for you. Okay, so I said forum. I meant group. So there's a Tevo group that's on here, and it's fantastic. People respond immediately. I'm on the group. But this is a great community for if you have any problems with your Tevo Little Monster. These guys are fantastic. And this is full of hackers, users. I mean, everything, you know, when I say hacker, I don't mean like malicious. I mean, people that will, you know, make the printer do more than what it's actually supposed to do. And they get it successfully to do it and things like that. So you have people that they know the firmware inside and out. They know the mechanics of it inside and out. I mean, some of these people are just fantastic. Can't say enough for them. So if any of you guys are watching that are out on that group, hats off to you. You have helped me out just as much as, you know, I've talked to you guys on these videos and stuff. You guys have helped me out more on that group. That group is fantastic. People respond to you literally within maybe a couple hours. I mean, it's fast. And so I highly recommend joining this group on Facebook and posting your problems there. But the main thing I see is that bed crashing thing where the tip just bam drills the bed and people can't seem to figure it out. Well, there's in my experience, two main causes for it. And one is that little wire, whether it's backwards or not. And the other is the 32 steps basically deal. Whoa. Basically that 32 or 16 steps that will cause it as well. So you have to make sure those things are set properly and it should work fine. Now beyond that, if you have all that set and it's still doing it, I don't know. I don't know because I haven't experienced that problem. But guys, I hope that you liked this video. Hopefully it didn't go on too long, but I just wanted to give you guys kind of an update on the Tevo Little Monster and how it's been working for me. I still love it. I love the machine. Of course, I'm a tinkerer. I'm not afraid to tear it apart and try to repair it and fix it. For those of you that just want a printer that just works, it does work out of the box, but you do have to build it. So that's another thing. If you're not a tinkerer, I probably wouldn't recommend this printer. I'd recommend something like the Wanao. That printer is still, in fact, you can see it. It's back there. That printer is magnificent. I have had zero problems with it. Zero. Well, no, I take it back. I had a thermistor die on the heated bed, and that was super easy to take care of. You just peel the tape off. It comes off. It has a plug. You unplug it. You buy a new one, plug it in, put the tape back down. You're done. I mean, it's super, super simple to replace. So that was the only problem I've ever had with that printer. And that printer just prints amazing. That's my go-to printer. When the Little Monster was dead, that one printed everything. And it was fantastic. So if you want a printer that's kind of more set and forget, I'd recommend the Wanao Duplicator i3 because it's cost effective. I think it's below $300 anymore, or maybe not, maybe it's below $400, but still it's like $350 or $325, very cost effective, and gets you into 3D printing. And you just put like 8 screws in to screw the top on because of the way they ship it, and level the bed, and you're off and printing, and it prints fantastic. So that's one for more people that kind of want to set and forget. If you want one that's fun to mod, fun to assemble and put together and tweak and things like that, the Little Monster is fantastic. And if you want a massive printer, the Little Monster is absolutely fantastic. I love that printer. So any case, so I don't want to say that these things are bad. They are frustrating. Definitely frustrating, but the support group is great. Go be a part of that Google groups if you have one of these. That way, if you run into any problems, those people are more than happy to help you. They'll share pictures. I had 2 or 3 people share firmware with me and stuff like that because I had written that I was having firmware issues. Just great group of people. Definitely check them out if you end up picking one of these up, because in fact, I think it's better. It's Tevo's support isn't even as good as that group. So that's definitely where to get your support from. So guys, thank you very much. Sorry, I'll quit rambling. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any of these problems or have any other issues, definitely let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know in the comments, for if you guys have experienced anything different, or if you know of different tricks or something like that, or you know of a different place to get the parts for this thing, because I know that I couldn't find it on their website. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right place, but I couldn't find any parts for it. But if you guys know, then definitely let me know. That way we can share it with everybody that watches. And down below, I'll put some links to some different parts where I got the boards and the other things and stuff like that. I'll put some links down there, so that way if you guys need to know, you're just baffled, you don't know where to get parts, I'll put some parts down in the description. So thanks again, guys, for watching. Stay tuned. I'll try to get back to my regularly scheduled program of releasing a video every week, and we will see you in the next video.